Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel is simply called Discerning What is True. Today is the 11th day of January 2025. So I'm going to be reading another installment of a particular book tonight. What is Kabbalah and Exodus by a gentleman named Zeb Ben Shimon Leve. That's Halevi. Levi. I'm sorry, not two eyes, just one eye. and so we're going to get into work. This is the fourth installment of this particular book. Actually, it's not the fourth one. It's actually the eighth one. So let's do something here. Easy for me to read. So let's get into the reading here. This is chapter 8. Again, moment of hesitation. Exodus chapter 4. Let me just say one thing about this book. The idea here is it's not a literal story. Egypt represents the what we call the flesh. All of us are born here. We reincarnate here. That is, we're born here, and most of us have, if not all of us, don't have any idea why we're here. No one really knows why we're here. Very few people do that. And so the Bible itself is actually esoteric work. It's a occult work. But people don't know that. They've been taught so much the literal interpretation. But the problem with when you make those grand statements, when you say that there's such a place as Sodom and Gomorrah, prove it. Just prove it. You can't. What about the boat that supposedly Noah used? Where's that at? Prove it. Okay, this is the point. If you're saying it's literal, then prove it. Okay, not by happenstance. And you're going to find out simply is it's not true. This is the whole key. Another key in the peg here, so to speak, is to understand it simply is when people say this a literal thing here, that is, there was a literal Noah who had a boat, an ark. We also talk about other things simply as well. If you say that, then you need to give verified proof that it's true. If you're believing that the Bible is literally true, and you believe the Bible and everything is true, you believe it's basically a span of only 6,000 years, you think that basically man has been here basically 6,000 years, you see. So you come in a presupposition. So when you say these statements, you need to prove them. You don't just need to say I have faith, because simply faith is nothing. That's just a belief. We're talking about serious business here. And so when people come out here and make some stupid things they believe, whatever, that's fine. You believe that. But if you want to really know, that is, you want to really, if they want to, but they don't want to do that. They accept it by faith. It's not enough. It's God did that. No, it has to be verified. Verify it. Prove it. And you'll find out you can't prove it. And in fact, the biblical archaeology book studies magazines go out. They're still searching for the Noah's Ark. They're still searching for Sodom and Gomorrah. They claim that these are actually towns, you see. Prove that these other people that they, the quote-unquote Israelites, quote-unquote, killed. Where are they today? Well, you killed them all. Well, that's what someone would say. But the point simply, was there ever a civilization there? And you come to find out simply is there's no proof of it. There isn't, you see. And the sad part simply is that it's all metaphysics. It's a story with a spiritual connection. You see, we came from the spirit world. And when we come here, we have what I call a moment, not a moment, but years and years of what I would call a lapse of remembering where we came from. And there's so many people out here who actually choose to take people's money and to distort the truth. And anybody that asks you to pay such and such amount of money for something, a book or this and that, you must understand simply is that you're making an assumption, and you're assuming this. You're assuming that by you paying for something, you're getting something what I would call verifiable truth. Same way what we call astrological charts and stuff like this. Same type of thinking, same purpose, such and such. It's just right there. I'm not saying that astrological charts are not important, but the point simply is anybody, especially with people what are called horoscopes, can tell you anything. Well, you're going to have a great day today. Okay. Well, that's pretty general, isn't it? How about something specific? You see, that's what, give me something specific. What's going to happen to me this day? What's going to happen to me? How about I give you this? How about it? Give me what's going to happen in my week here. Tell me what's going to happen. Because you are being played. People do all kinds of things for money. And they will lie and steal for it, you see. So let's get into the reading here. Again, moment of hesitation, Exodus 4. Before Moses returned to Egypt, he went to Jethro and formally asked to be released from his contract. This is the normal procedure when a disciple leaves his master. Tradition states that Jethro said, quote, "Go in peace, enter Egypt in peace, and leave the land in peace," end quote. Where he knew that Moses' task was to help redeem those in slavery and bring them to the holy mountain. Now, what is slavery here? Slavery simply is the bondage of the flesh, bondage of sin, meaning simply is you missing the mark. You're not as Calvin would say, John Calvin would say simply, you're as low as a worm in God's sight. That's bullshit. Okay? So man is capable of doing good. He's capable of doing good to his neighbors. He's capable of helping his neighbors. He's capable of doing those things. So man is not, quote unquote, completely corrupt. Now, there are some that are really completely corrupt, but the majority of people on this planet are not that way. Okay? And so what we're seeing here is, like I said earlier, Egypt represents what we call the flesh, the physical manifestation of what we are. The Holy Land, or Israel, is representing what we call the spiritual attributes of what we are really, because we came from the spirit world, you see. So let's get into the reading. Like I said, I get a little bit wound up here, but it's important that people come out here and say, well, such and such. Well, then prove it. Tell me. Show me where it's at. Show me the ark. Prove it. Okay? Because what you're quoting is simply is either put up or shut up. You just straight out say it, because it's either it's correct or it's not. There's no middle ground here. And there is no there's no actually any type of validity to even Jesus being on this planet. Okay. And there is no historian who's actually could give that information. But people come back to you and says, well, the Bible's the word of God. Yes, it is. But you're not reading it correctly. You're not reading it correctly at all. You see. In fact, Jesus speaks of his ascension. Maybe we can talk about that with Phil sometime. Phil Langdon is. So the oral tradition adds that Moses left for Egypt on the same as that had carried Abraham to Mount Moriah, which means, according to some, quote, the vision of Yahweh, quote, end quote. This same ass, while being the most ignorant of animals, would, accordingly to tradition, know of the Messiah's presence before Israel and bear him at the end of days into Jerusalem, end quote. On the way down into Egypt, a most curious incident occurred, which is recorded in Exodus chapter 4, 24 through 27. In this Moses, who has the El Materia Ha the Halem, the staff of the Elohim in his hand, rests at the lodging place. Here the scripture says that Yahweh met and sought to kill Moses. Now, this incident has puzzled many people over the centuries. Why should God seek to kill Moses after all the trouble taking over him? The answer is simple. If one has witnessed a similar event in their life, where a man or woman who should know better deliberately neglects to carry out his spiritual commitment. Such people, and it does happen, are demoted after several warnings by providence from the level of spiritual work. Quote, they died. D-I-E, not died, die. D-I-E. To his possibilities by avoiding its responsibilities. In Moses' case, the considerable reluctance to go to Egypt reasserted itself, and he stopped over long at the lodging place as an act of laziness or willfulness. This created a situation where the divine confronted him and threatened his spiritual lifeline. At this point, Moses' wife, by circumcising their son, reminded Moses of the covenant made with his forefathers concerning their relationship with God and his own commitment in particular. She threw her foreskin at Moses' feet. That's in Exodus chapter 4, chapter 26, verse 26, with the words, quote, surely a bridegroom of blood art thou to me, end quote. This sharp reminder of the interconnection between the body and soul and spirit had the desired effect, and Moses' illness in the legend begins to abate. The scripture goes on, thou Eliv memene, end quote, and he desisted or withdrew from him, end quote. That is, the Lord no longer sought to chastise Moses. According to Jewish folklore, Moses was all but swallowed up by the angels of judgment and death until Zipporah, that's Zipporah, freed him. And let's see if I have my book here. I don't see it right here on my. I was going to see something here real quick. I don't see it here. I sometimes pick it up and then I put it somewhere else. Here it is. So this is one of the books here. I'm going to see if it's in here. I have not looked this up personally. Okay, so I'm reading it for the first time myself. Okay. So let me take the glasses off here, make it easier for me to see. You have to also ask yourself about not only these weird names, like I've never heard this name, where's that at? People just they just blow by it, which I used to do. And Phil told me more about this and said, no, these are interesting words, and they basically are metaphysic words, if you wanted to look into them. Okay. Zipparah, Exodus 2, chapter 21. It's mentioned as a Hebrew adjective as sparrow, but it also says daybreak of hope. So that's what it means, daybreak of hope for him. Now, there is another particular book. It's a hardback book here. This was done by the Charles Fillmore deal. Now, he goes in more elaborate deals here, far more deeper than this little booklet here. And I'm not going to go into this thing because he's got a ton of it in here. Okay, but you can download these books also. You don't have to just buy it. Now, I don't think you can download this book here. I don't think you can. So anyway, I've gotten off a tangent here for a second. So it's not a person. It's not a person name. Okay, it's to keep those who are not ready for the truth. They don't go any further than that. They just simply. They're not going to pursue it, you see, because they don't look up the meaning of the word, you see. From this dramatic relapse, the narrow switches to Egypt. That is the narrative, I should say, not narrow. Narrative switches to Egypt, to Aaron, who's informed by God of Moses' coming. And so Aaron goes out into the wilderness to meet his brother. They met Baha Elohim, quote, in the mountain of God. This is Exodus chapter 4:27. That is the part of the individual which has been growing even within the routine of ordinary life comes to meet the part of himself that has been evolving under discipline. So this is a part, if I understand it correctly, this is the moment of ascension. Okay, if I understand this right, in the mountain of God, which is the mountain, part of you is the highest part of who you are. That is the part of the individual which has been growing even within the routine of ordinary life, comes to meet the part of himself that has been evolving under discipline. This is what's within you, within your head. This occurs in a state of psychological self-consciousness upon the lower slopes of the intermountain of God. So there's nothing outside there. This is talking inwardly. This is psychological. Okay. The Egyptians talk about psychological issues too. They knew this. They just used a different way of doing it compared to what we do today. We have actually been in blindness for a long time, psychologically too. Upon the lower slopes of the inner mountain of God, here's the zone that lies between the spirit and the psyche, where the two brothers unite and exchange. They descend into Egypt and address themselves to the elders of the children of Israel. This means that the mutual knowledge of the inner and outer worlds is brought into the ego consciousness and shown to the more mature parts of the lower psyche. Here the archetype Aaron of Hod, again, this is talking about the tree, one that's got three pillars. All the words of God spoken to Moses, while Moses on the active Sephirah, Nizal, demonstrates from the pillar of prophecy the miraculous signs of the rod, serpent, and leprosy hand. So again, this cannot be taken, it doesn't make any sense literally, okay? It's like a foreign language, you see. Because the people actually saw and sensed the miracles, they, or the body-bound psyche they represent, believed that the Lord, quote, had visited them, end quote, or was aware of their afflicted condition, and so they prostrated themselves. The physical base reason, feeling, and sense triad that surrounds the ego mind on the psychological tree are easily impressed by the supernatural. But this also demonstrates the difference between belief and faith. One may believe without knowing what one has seen, which is not the same as faith, which requires real knowledge. Okay, that's very important, folks. Unless you experience that knowledge which comes from God, you won't understand it. And the only person I know of that understands it is Phil Langdon, you see. This is why I interview him. Okay. This is proved later again and again. The Israelites revert to disbelief in their incomprehensiveness of what their journey is about. At this point, the miraculous appears in order to show a sense-grounded psychology that there are other dimensions and hope of help. However, redemption is not as instantaneous as many suddenly converted people would like to believe. While grace may give a glimpse of other worlds, it will not transform the being of a person unless there has been a great deal of preparation. In other words, you've done some work. In the case of the Israelites, there was little or none. There was only a memory of a promise about a distant land. This trace of the covenant deep within everyone's psyche is beautifully illustrated by the rabbinical story of the signs that Jacob had given to Joseph to recognize the redeemed by. This piece of knowledge had been passed on to a niece named Sarah, who was still alive. The elders consulted her about Moses, and she confirmed that these were indeed the signs she had been told about by her father. The next task, however, was not to be so easy, because while the elders of the lower psyche saw the possibility of redemption, They were too weak to go with Moses and Aaron to confront Pharaoh, that is the Lord of the body. And so that's the end of the chapter here. Very short one. Actually, I don't think it's more than 3 or 4 pages long. So that's chapter 8 of the particular book I'm reading from. It's the moment of hesitation is the name of the chapter. And here's one of the things simply is the last part of what we're going here. With internally here, he says something kind of stands out. They were too weak to go with Moses and Aaron. So what does that mean? They were not ready to confront Pharaoh. Pharaoh is, the headmaster, so to speak, of the physical world. While Moses and Aaron are, the spiritual part, so to speak. You see, that's why it's metaphysical. You see, no one would understand this in the church, folks. They just wouldn't. And most people, even outside the church, would not know that. The church has had enormous effect upon people that it keeps them in a state of being blind because they don't understand the Bible they're reading. Of course not. There's no one that's actually explained that. The only one that's actually explained some of this actually has been Phil Langdon. So anything you want to look into some of the things this about, don't look to me, look to Phil Langdon. Phil Langdon's done many, many videos. You can look him up on YouTube channel, and there's videos of him. He's done, I know he's probably done 50 to 75. I don't know how many, but it's over 50 videos, I'm sure. So anyway, I just want to conclude this. Again, the date is 11th day of January 2026. And so the next section we'll begin to move in this particular book, Kabbalah and Exodus, is what we call action. So that will be this will set what we call a 3-part play in some ways. I don't know if it's correct here, but I'm just going to add this. You get the knowledge, you understand some of this stuff, but eventually you're going to have to make a decision, and that is what we call action, begin to move in that direction, so to speak. So, and that will be in the next talk, will be on chapter 9, will be called First Reaction, chapter Exodus, not first chapter, but Exodus 5 and 6, the 5th and 6th chapter. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Change something real quick here. And I hope that this maybe stimulates you to look deeper and try to find something that really you need to be seeking after. Okay. All right. We'll talk to you soon. Again, you take care. Have a good night.